The next question, the name of Deputy Thomas Pringle, who's 30 seconds to introduce his question.
Thank you, Laskin Corla. Answer to this question seeks clarification just on how the government came up with the figure of €20 million for the Mica Redress Scheme, and whether this figure is insufficient to address the housing needs of all those affected. Is it the question that it was tokenistic and it was announced during the local elections? Anyone can tell you that €20 million is insufficient. An estimated 4,600 homes, most of which are in County Donegal, are affected by Mica. So taking that into account, a large portion of those are not even taking up the scheme. So I think it is good news that the scheme has been there, but the question is, how will the funds be made available? And an even bigger question is, will those funds meet the redress needs of all those affected by Mica? Thank you.
Minister, 2 minutes.
In October 2018, the Government approved, in principle, the development of a grant scheme of financial assistance to support affected homeowners in counties Donegal and Mayo to carry out the necessary remediation works to dwellings that have been damaged due to defective concrete blocks. This followed on from work carried out by the expert panel on concrete blocks established by my department in 2016. Last month, agreement was reached with the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform to allocate €20 million to a scheme for this purpose and within the €2.4 billion housing budget for 2019. The full terms and conditions of the scheme will be finalised over the coming weeks, again in consultation with the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform. This process will take account of the engagement that my department is currently having with both Donegal and Mayo County Councils on the arrangements for the scheme. On completion of this work, it is intended to revert to Government on the matter. The ultimate cost of the scheme will be determined by the scheme's final agreed terms and conditions and will, of course, also depend on the number of applications made under the scheme and the extent of damage to be remediated in each individual house ultimately approved for grant assistance. The €20 million earmarked for the scheme in 2019 is an initial allocation to support its early phase of operation. Funding for future years will be agreed on an annual basis as part of the normal estimate process. And again, just to clarify, in all our engagement with the Mica Action Group over the last couple of years, and I met them quite regularly, as I'm sure you are aware of that, and we've talked through this process on numerous occasions. And I always explain that, similar to the Pyrite scheme, you start the scheme off with an initial allocation of money to get it up and running, get it started, deal with priority housing, and then you move on and you draw down money as each year progresses. And that's exactly what's happening here too. Nobody is saying that 20 million will fix all the houses. We wish it would, but we know it won't. I think you know that too. And every house will be a different cost to fix, based on the standard protocol we have there now and an engineer's assessment and agreement, and we'll work through that. And it will need additional funding, and that is part of the process, and we'll draw it down over the time ahead as well. So we are committed to doing a scheme, and we're very sincere on this, and it wasn't just a local election issue. This was announced last October that we would do that because the people we dealt with on a regular basis needed to know once and for all, could we do a scheme? And we said we could last October, and they accepted that it would take a little bit of time then to bring it forward as well.
Deputy Pringle's first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for your response. Just in relation to the scheme is announced, but the terms and the conditions of that there haven't been finalised yet. And when can people expect that they'll actually be able to carry out actual work on their houses? Because that's going to be significant. Because as time drags on, the houses are deteriorating further, and they're going to end up costing more as well. So I think what we have to see now is when actual works can start. It seems to me that there's still a lot of procedural issues to be sorted out in relation to that, and we could very quickly get into them this time next year before any works could actually be happening on the ground. And I don't think anybody wants to see that.
In fairness, Deputy Pringle, it's a fair question. And again, when we would have last met the group, apart from formerly in Donegal, we would have been targeting an opportunity to try to start fixing houses maybe this July. It looks now as if we're going to be into the autumn, but I don't see any reason why we can't have all these procedures worked out and be starting to fix houses in the autumn. There's been a couple of meetings now already between Mayo and Donegal with our officials since we announced this clarification as well. Everybody has agreed on all sides to move as quickly as we possibly can, because naturally we all want to step in there and fix houses. So I don't see any reason why the procedures and all that can't be put to bed over the weeks ahead, and certainly we'll be back to Government then for the final sign-off. And we should be able to fix houses in autumn, which I accept, hands up here, that is certainly a number of months behind what we thought we would be able to do when I last met the group formally in Donegal. We would have been hoping for possibly June or July this year. It looks like it will be the autumn, but hopefully that will get started then and we can move on.
Final supplementary, Deputy Thomas Pringle.
Quickly, just one other issue, Minister, is in relation to people who maybe can't afford the balance of the money. I think the scheme is looking to pick up 90% of the cost. But what about the people who maybe can't afford to bridge the gap themselves? And will the scheme accommodate those? Because is going to be based on the deterioration of the house rather than whether somebody can afford to actually deal with it or not. And I think that's going to be a critical part of it as well, because people have put out an awful lot of money already in this situation, and they may not be physically be able to afford the balance of the money as well.
Again, Deputy Pringle, as you'll understand, the scheme is not fully finalised yet and will be in the weeks ahead. And those in most in need will be helped first. I mean, that's the logical way to approach this. I mean, we've all been in some of these houses and we know how bad they are. Under the nature of the scheme, yes, the full cost will not be in a position to be met. But there'll be Donegal and Mayo local authorities said they will work with us on that to try to make sure this option will suit most people as well, and we'll try and deal with that too. So let's just wait until the scheme finalised in the weeks ahead too. But we recognise that, and we've chosen this form of scheme to be able to do as quickly as we possibly can to get started. And I gave that commitment to Solomon Minister Murphy that we would develop a scheme that would start fixing houses as quickly as possible, and that's what we're trying to progress with as well.
I think we move on now to the other question.